friend Amy Cunningham introduced me to Martie McNabb. Amy's based in Brooklyn, and that's where you were based for a long time. And now you have your RV named Brooklyn.
Correct.
And I'm pleased to call Martie my friend, and so honored to bring what you bring to the conversation here to the Before I Die Festival. So come on, camera.
Come on down. All right. Thank you.
And help us learn about our show and tales.
Okay. Yeah, like what happens at these things. So hello everyone in Zoom land as well. So how many of you experienced show and tell from elementary school? Many, yeah, lots of people. So keep in mind, I started my events, which were originally show and tell, that now are called show and tell, in New York City. So it became very, very clear to me quickly that this is not a common experience for people outside the United States. So don't want to make an assumption about it. Needless to say, in a lot of communist countries, the idea of sharing what you have at home versus what other kids have at home, inappropriate. So that was a big learning experience for me. So second question, how many of you have used the bathroom here and thought, I want to put that gown on? That little robe on. That robe on, that red robe. I was just like, what if I come out in that red robe? Secondly, or thirdly, or fourthly, how many of you are sort of like have become the de facto family historian? Like keeper of the stuff, right? Keeper of the things, all the photos and documents and things. Well, about 30 years ago, I started my first business, which of course my accountant would disagree with me because you have to make money if it's a business, right? Oh my God, that. But I started my first business called Memories Out of the Box. And the idea is that people collect a lot of stuff. They inherit stuff, and they most commonly have no idea what to do with it. So it sits in a box, in a bag, in a suitcase, in a storage unit, in the attic, the basement. Needless to say, hidden away. These are all the souvenirs. They're the documentation of our lives. Our life story is told with that. The death overdrafts last night. I learned that a friend's wife is the collector of family jewelry. So whenever anyone in the family passes away, she's like, and people are like, nobody wants, who wants this, or nobody wants it. They make that assumption. She's like, oh, don't give that away. I want that. And what she has found, like I have found, is that all of these things, and they don't have to be these precious diamonds and heirlooms and have huge financial value, but they all have stories. And those stories have a way of connecting us with one another, with our history, with our family's history, with one another's history. So realistically, my name is Martie McNabb, and I ended up, as Gail mentioned, I told my good friend Amy Cunningham, who's a funeral director in Brooklyn, New York, where I lived for 28 years. But I knew her, I think I met her about 5 years before I left New York. And when she had found out that I was coming out to Albuquerque to see if a relationship that I had started 30 years before, and fell in love with this woman, but the timing was wrong, if that was going to work or not. Like you had to come and see 30 years later if there was something there, if the spark was still there. She was like, you have to meet my friend Gail. I've got to introduce you to Gail. And I am so grateful to have connected with Gail and so many people in the death care community. Now, my newest collection is Danielle. It's, I just am so grateful to be surrounded by and supported by people that are underrepresented and underappreciated, the last responders, so to speak. And by the way, the relationship was absolutely worth it. And she is now my wife. And she's in the back of the room right now. Judy. So today I did end up asking people to bring an object from, I was wrong, Danielle, from somebody who passed away. And share that they keep in their homes, they keep on wearing on their bodies, they put in their cars, in their bags, on their windowsills. They surround themselves, they wear it, obviously jewelry, right? Or any clothing. So bring any object that has a story about someone who passed away and share that story. However, I really want everyone to share. And if you didn't bring something, you can always describe it, right? So just say, what is that thing that I surround myself with, that I have, that every time I see it, every time I touch it, I can remember that person by. So that, without further ado, I'm going to open the floor up to maybe somebody who's done it before. So Danielle, because it really is like show and tell. So it really is, but
I'm here. Well, that was perfect. As you were talking, I did remember something that I do carry on my person and in my bag. So it's a little tiny moon, and I don't even know what it's made of. It might be a little piece of bone. I can't tell. I don't know what this is. But it's from a client that I had. She died in July, and she was a medical aid in dying patient. And 87 years old, COPD, and she was tough, man. This lady was German. She had actually had a really traumatic life, a really traumatic childhood. And we helped unload and unpack a lot of stuff before she left. And we did a releasing ritual together where she helped release a lot of pain surrounding her mom and abuse that she had perpetrated against her as a kid. And after that releasing ritual, the next time I went to go see her, she told me, Danielle, I decided I can't leave until I'm full of nothing but love. And so, yeah, so this reminds me of that. And so this stays on my person at all times. So I'm having a tough day. That's a win.
Wow.
So, yeah. So.
Wow.
Oh, yep.
Until I'm filled with nothing but love. Wow. That's a little challenging. It's not just me, I guess, right? That is beautiful. That is so, yes. Hold these little, well, I know that the woman from the death doula part who is from Alex, talked about ritual, right? And involving ritual in our life. So those talismans, those touchstones, those things that when we're having a hard time, remind ourselves, that, remind ourselves of that is really important to have. So who would like to be next to share? Wonderful. Thank you.
My name is Jessie, and I'm Danielle. Your statement about living with nothing but love reminds me of my father. And this is a card that was made at his funeral, for his funeral. And on it's just a picture of him, but he does to me radiate love tremendously. And on the back of this are the lyrics to the song Forever Young. He was a huge Bob Dylan fan, and but his message all throughout life was about love, and that love multiplies. It is never depleted. It's always available. And it's the answer to most of our problems. But what I brought actually is this little book of matches that is empty. I don't know if you remember the restaurants used to give out matches.
Yes.
Wherever you went, grab a handful, and this was from a particular restaurant that used to be on Central called Nob Hill Cafe. And it was where Scallows is now. And I spent most of my childhood away from Albuquerque, even though my family, my father was here. And Nob Hill Cafe was a place that he basically lived. He also drank a lot and was a very social man. And they called him the guest bartender because he was always there, willing to kind of make, but for him, his addiction was a part of who he was and a part of the lessons he learned in life. And I think what made him available to love people at their lowest, because he had experienced times of extreme low and struggle, and always found his way out through connection. So this morning I forgot to bring something, and I ran back home and just was like, what do I see of my dad's? And I came across this in a container of just things that I found on his bedside when he passed. And it was it's just, I think it's just the ordinariness of it. Is it just conjures a time, it conjures a man, and it doesn't have to be special. But it stayed in my life as this very small, empty, useless being, but it is there, and it can immediately spark a memory of him and the lessons of his life. And yeah, so I'll just stop there.
Oh, that's
Thank
wonderful.
you.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's Debbie? Jessie. We met last night.
Yes, we did.
Yes, and you took a road trip too. Okay, it's all coming back. My memories suck, but anyway, thank you. Thank you for sharing that and demonstrating. So I brought a book from a friend of mine. Bill Shapiro and Naomi are friends of mine. I don't know Naomi quite as well, but he's based out of Brooklyn, but also just recently got a place in Taos. So and he and Naomi traveled the country and asked lots of people, and included 150 of them, and asked them one simple question: what thing brings you joy, magic, and meaning? But one thing. And so this is literally show and tell, what I've been doing for a decade now, but in a book form. And it's just like you said, they're not, and what they said is this is not, it's like your heart isn't an accountant. Back to that, right? It's about these stories, it's about these simple things, and you should see some of them are obviously pretty, like big awards or whatever, but most of them are things like that. I've had people, I can't tell you how many people have brought matchsticks to my show and tales over the years. I've probably hosted up over 200 of them, and I think I've had at least a half a dozen matchbooks that have. And so I thank you so much for letting people know it doesn't have to be this like epic story or this epic thing. It's just everything has a story. So thanks for demonstrating that so well, Jessie. Who would like to be next? Wonderful.
Here I am again. And I want to brag about my mother-in-law. I got the good one. Randy did not. One of the sweetest things that she ever got me was a pair of long johns, because I'm cold all the time. They're white, they're plain, but they're warm. And every time I wear them, I think of her. Sometimes even when I wear my fancier ones, the black ones, I think about the white ones that Vera gave me.
Oh.
And I think, thank you.
Oh my goodness. Well, and thank you, both of you, for this space. It was
welcome.
great, and your art is amazing, so thanks so much for that story. So, and that reminds me, a similar thing. I got the good mother-in-law too.
Yeah.
What can I say? I love her, but she's not the greatest mother-in-law, my mother. So thank you. Who would like to be next? Wonderful, Rosa.
My name is Rosa. And my item, you can't see because I didn't bring it with me, but it's a sweater that my brother wore. He was a mail carrier. And I have a picture of him where he's in the snow with his big heavy jacket and he's waving at the camera. And we used that as his last photo in his video at his funeral. And I love that sweater. I love it. I wear it and I have to cover the patch that says USP because I'm not representing the US Post Office. But I love it because it's warm, and warmth is something that we always want to feel when we are around someone. But the item I did bring, and this is like, my mom was a seamstress and she was always making things. And this was on one of the trips to Albuquerque. She didn't like that I traveled alone. And she would always call me and say, when you're going, who's going with you? I bet you're going by yourself again. You need to take somebody with you. And at one point she had made these little dogs because she made things all the time. And I said, well, I'm not going by myself. I'm taking Sisto. That's and she said, who's that? I don't know that person. I'm like, what's Sisto? You met him. You know, and then later I said, what's that little puppy? So Sisto's gonna be 17 next month. And he goes with me everywhere.
Oh my God, Rosa. Oh. Wow. I love the story of the sweater, like the hug, you know, the clothes and, you know, your long johns and the warmth, the similar things. But the funniest part of that story is like divine timing. It's like, so what did I bring? So, whoa. So I had a similar story with everybody when I decided to get my camper van, and whose name is Brooklyn, because I lived in Brooklyn for 28 years. And so now I'm still living in Brooklyn to an extent in my van. And I got the same, you know, thing where people are like, you can't go on your, because this was before I reconnected with my wife. So they're like, you can't go and you're traveling the country as a single woman without, you know, a companion. Same thing, right? And you were on road trip too, so you can't go out, you know, as a single woman traveling the country without a companion. And of course, I, being my mother's daughter, because my mother, as I was explaining earlier, my mother is not a people person. She is. She likes animals a lot more than people. So she makes an exception for me and my brother, but that's about far as she goes. But she, I ended up seeing this in a box. It just was paper, and it was something that my stepfather had actually said is the only good cat is a flat cat. So these two guys that ran this company called Blue Q ended up putting this out as like part of their marketing and stuff in their bag, in their box. And when I saw it, I was like, perfect. I'm going to get a little, you know, cardboard and put her in. And so she has now, Flatsy is her name. Flatsy. Although keep in mind, animals do not have a perception of dimension, right? Or they don't have the 3D. So if I put this in front of a dog or a cat, they will hiss and bark and all that, thinking it's real. And I even had a person say, oh, I think your cat wants something. I'm like, what? So anyway, Flatsy has now covered about 93,000 miles so far, and she is my companion. So, and yours is called?
Sisto.
Sisto.
S-I-S-T-O.
Sisto. So I'm glad we both have companions that travel with us. So, all right. So anyone else?
Oh, don't mind.
Awesome. And then
Speaking
we'll.
of traveling companions.
Yes.
So you've heard this story, but this is a little stuffed toy bat that belonged to my husband Dave. Bats were his personal symbol, and bats actually represent the transition between life and death. And Dave died in April 28th of this year from medical complications after prostate surgery. Men don't go into the hospital expecting to die from complications from prostate surgery, but he had cardiac history going into it. His cardiologist had said, yeah, you should be able to do the surgery, but 2 days after the surgery, when you're off of blood thinners, he had a heart attack. Led to sepsis, coding, just a whole host of unstable vital signs. And after he coded more than a week in the intensive care unit, they said, you might want to think about comfort care. So I signed him up. The woman who came to sign him up for inpatient hospice, she was like, oh, you're the Gail Rubin? The Doyenne of Death? I am such a fangirl. So that was a nice light moment in what was kind of a downer day. But the hospice experience at Caseman inpatient was just really wonderful. I was there around the clock, except for a couple of hours when somebody else would come and sit with him, and I would go take a shower and change my clothes, come back. And he waited until I left the room to make a phone call. And the day before he died, he had another bat in his car that I took out and brought to the hospice, because this is Matt, the traveling bat from Fraggle Rock. Matt would send postcards home to his nephews. So anytime he was traveling, Dave had a bat in his car, and he usually kept this in a pocket of a coat. And I was, so I brought the bat from his car and tucked it under his arm. And that went with him after he died, after I left the room to make a phone call. But he did that definitely deliberately. Oh, thank you. Okay. So, early on, Dave was a volunteer for something called Talking Talons, where he would like have a hawk on his arm and talk to students about, and it's still in existence. It's like a youth leadership organization. I don't think they take the birds out anymore to show kids, but it still exists. And instead of flowers, I asked for people to make donations to Talking Talents, and so many people donated. They set up a scholarship in his honor. Oh, yeah. And they have a thrift store where that helps fund their organization. But they said anything I wanted to donate to their thrift store, they would donate to the scholarship that they got from that. So I was like, great, I'm going to donate all this stuff to them. So I started going through coats, and I found this little Matt the Bat in one of the coats. I'm holding on to this one.
It was a particularly tough year for you.
Yes.
Too many very, very big losses.
Yeah, my dad died on August 29th, and I actually snipped a lock of his hair before they came and took him away. Because he still had black hair at 93.
Oh my God.
Oh, it had some gray in it, but it's still a lot of black hair.
So did you do that with your husband too?
No, he didn't have hair on his head.
Wow, so that's part of the, and I joked, I did hear this, because Gail's been a big supporter of mine and for years and years since I met her, and she came to a talk I was giving last week and she shared that story. And I said, what I find it fascinating what people find in coats and overcoats and things like that. And I said, what I'll find with my mom is going to be tissues, either used or not, and poop bags, but not so much anymore because unfortunately her best companion dog passed away a couple of years ago. So I'm not seeing as many poop bags in her inner stuff, but I'm like, I've been talking to her about that for a while. So who might like to go next? Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, love it.
My name's Brooke. This cup has evolved over the years. Growing up, I grew up in Gallup, and my parents, born in Durango, my parents had a cabin outside of Durango on a lake, and this coffee cup, along with 6 or 8 others, lived in that cabin. The cabin was bought when I was 3 months old. And so it's been the consistent thing in my life throughout the whole entire career. My father was always planning on selling it. It was something that he wanted to, use an investment in a retirement plan. And when the time came that they were getting ready to not go up there anymore, the plan was to be sold. And we wanted to buy it, but we had just started a business and I had taken all of our life savings and put that into a business. The timing was off. It was a little off. So my husband and I went up there and we got these cups and I brought them back as a loss to that place that was very special to me. Spent summers there, went there all the time. Moving forward several years, my father was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia. And he told us, you can't buy this place, you just bought a business, you need to focus on that. And I always felt like that was a real loss to me, but I think it was a gift that my father gave to me to allow me to do something different. But this is a cup that he used for 30 plus years in the cabin. So when he died in 2015 at Caseman Hospice, which was phenomenal, I started using it every day. And so now I have 2. And I'm fortunate that it made it here today. I was worried. But it is something that I drink out of every morning now. And it's something that I get to share with my father.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Yeah, Marty. Nice to meet you too. Thank you. I love that. Absolutely love that. Like I said, everything has a story, and actually having something that you use daily, sit down and it's like have coffee or tea or whatever in, it's a special bond because you're spending a lot of time with it as opposed to just looking at it a few times. So that's beautiful. Who would like to be next?
I have, come up to the front.
We do have a few people online that
Oh,
would
I
like
see. Sorry.
to hear. That's okay. Would like to hear and see your story.
My name is Pamelina. I have 2 little things. One is I have a brass, imagine a tongue depressor, a little thicker, not quite as long, brass, and it's engraved in black. And it says, "So many men, so little time." Wonder where I got this. When my mother passed, we cleaned up things at her house and it was there, and I just put it on my keychain that day, and it's still there. And people look at it and they, wow, that's cool, but they like it even more when they know whose it was. The other one is, how many of you saw Out of Africa?
Yeah.
The movie with Meryl Streep. Yes. Remember when Robert Redford is standing, there's this bougie white tent and Robert Redford's standing behind her, washing her hair in a porcelain basin and pouring the water. Okay. So I had a patient a couple of years ago. He was a world traveler and a bird aficionado and an engineer. He was an amazing Renaissance man. We'll call him Joe. He was about 83. And he was a curmudgeon. He was so, you know, and I had to really watch my P's and Q's around him. I couldn't fool around. And I called him curmudgeon and he loved it. Well, anyway, as he got prostate cancer and I treated him for about 3 years before, during, and after. And one of the touching things he did was towards the end, when he was going to pass in about 3 or 4 months, I have a policy. I need 48 hours notice or I bill because I have people in pain on a waiting list. Well, there's no way I was going to bill this guy anyway. But he didn't do it. He didn't cancel his appointment on the phone. He was getting weaker and weaker. And he came all the way down. He lived up in Sandia Heights and I live near the university. And he drove all the way down and he sat down and I thought, okay, take off your shoes, go get ready, here we go. And he said, I'm not staying today. And I said, And he says, I'll pay you, but I just wanted to say goodbye because I'm not going to be coming anymore. And that just touched me so much.
Wow.
He honored me so much to do that. But what I want to say too is his family took the cremation ashes and made those little white stones. Have you seen those?
Yes.
And they put one in a beautiful little bag and gave it to me and I carry it around. I didn't bring it today, but I told him before he passed about when I do medical missions. When I went to Ecuador, I spoke solid Spanish for a month. I did a medical mission and on the way home, I stopped in Galapagos like cherry on the Sunday to have some fun before I came back. And I told him how I was going to do a medical mission as part of the medical philanthropy program I'm in Southeast Asia. And on the way home, I was going to stop in Southern Africa because I'd already been to Northern Africa. And I said, remember Out of Africa when Robert Redford washed Meryl Streep's hair? And he says, yeah. And I said, well, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to reenact that. I'm going to be in front of a bougie white tent. I'm going to have a guy come behind me and wash my hair in a porcelain basin and pour the water. And he says, yeah, like that's really going to happen. And I said, watch me. Well, he's gone now, but you can bet when it happens, he'll be watching.
Yeah. Watch me. Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you so much. I love the work. I mean, the work that all of you do. It's fascinating and so important. Anyone else? Please.
My name is Kelly, and I brought a natural heart-shaped coral, and it has shells on it. And it was a gift sent to me by my twin sister, Kim. She was living in the Big Island, Hawaii, and that was her most happy place. And the reason that this is so special to me is because through her life and her path, she had to navigate a lot of physical and emotional and mental difficulties. And when she went to Hawaii, I saw it in her, I heard it in her, absolute peace and a grounding in for her the truth that love heals. And so she used to send me all kinds of stuff from Hawaii, and then she actually flew me out, and I was able to go to Hawaii and visit with her. She passed away 1 year ago in 1 week. And so I hold on to the love and process and let go of anything else that doesn't matter, because it doesn't. And so for her to find her peace, her love, her paradise, that's why I work in this field, because I want people to understand the options they have for their paradise, their love, their grounding in the options, that bring that to them. So.
Oh, so beautiful. Thank you so much. And also thank you so much to everyone in this field that is like, so I was a personal historian, or I consider myself still a personal historian for 30 years. And now I consider myself a legacy artist. But what I didn't understand about end of life, hospice work and death doula work was all the legacy work that you do. And I am just so thrilled that that seems so deeply woven into the work that you do, because it's so important. And there weren't enough of us certainly doing it. And also, as Danielle and we all talk about, it's like it's always a juggle to figure out, like, we've still got to make some money, we've still got to pay our bills, so like managing all of that. So having people who can do this legacy work with people towards the end of the life, that's really important. I just had a friend who used just last week ended up taking advantage of the medical aid and dying. She had been diagnosed 2 years ago with glioblastoma. And so one of her legacy things was to leave a legacy scholarship for people in the photo management community, people who help with the thousands and millions of photos that we all have. And so this year is the first one of that kind, but we're hoping to continue that. And thank Sharon for her generous gift. Anyone else want to share? People on. Yes, anyone from, see, nobody's on camera, so I can't see anybody on camera. So yeah. Somebody has two people have pictures, but everybody else's names, and then there's Keeper. But anyone online want to share? I don't see any hands or anything. So no. So Gail had asked me when we were putting together the bags if I had like some resources, because needless to say, I am a firm believer in the fact that the best things in life aren't things yet, as you just experienced and I've experienced for the last decade. Things have a way of holding on to these deep, important stories and connections with people and the past and our present and what we want in our future to an extent. So they are super important, but sometimes, especially when we're downsizing or when we're having to clear things out, once our loved one has passed away, we kind of get overwhelmed with all the stuff. So I have a resource list that I want to, that I'm going to pass out with some great books on the subject, some shows that may not directly address it, but I'm sort of like, can you tell the story of the thing? Can you take a photograph of these objects? It's not quite the same as holding it. I get that. I totally get that. But sometimes we just can't keep it all, right? So I've got a resource list. My friend Matt Paxton from Hoarders, if you know about hoarding stuff, he has a great book, Keep the Memories, Lose the Stuff. And he makes suggestions. One of the things that I've started was like 2 years ago. It's called the Your Life in 30 Things Challenge, those 30-day challenges on social media. Well, I ended up thinking, well, can you look around your space? Can you look around your person, your car, your office, look around your home and pick 30 things that would tell your life story? So it's basically, you just write down what the thing, jot it in. I didn't bring enough copies of this one, but I'm going to hand off some information to Gail. We'll send it through a follow-up email where you can get this, but I have a resource list that I can hand out. But yeah, this is the full resource list. It's like 12 pages, and I just was like, I don't think I can get this together to hand it out. But yeah, so I suggest I have 24 different themes that I've been working with the last decade. Inviting people to share stories about love letters, lockets, and valentines, cards, letters, and thank you notes, tails, paws, beaks, and claws. Of course, scars, tats, and piercings, they all have a story. We have, shoes, boots, bags, and hats, so sweaters, all of that is welcome in it. So I encourage people to think about these different themes and then think, is there an object that comes to mind when I think, do I keep that? How is that important? How does that tell a piece of my history, my personal history? So I'm going to pass that out. And
What would you recommend for people, since you're a photo manager?
yes,
And certainly we have a lot of digital photos now, but I'm sure a lot of people will have the paper and film
yes,
files.
yes,
What do you do with all that?
all that, right.
I got boxes of
Thank you.
them.
Yes, boxes. I know, I've seen the boxes.
Yes.
So we've talked about it, but I'm gonna do, that's okay. It takes time. So, as I mentioned, it's an organization that my friend Kathy Nelson started a little over a decade ago, basically the same time that I started Memories Out of the Box and then Show and Tales. And now it's called the Photo Managers. So if you Google it, the Photo Managers, if you're looking for a second career, there are more and more people, just like the deaf care and deaf education community. It's a young community, so there needs to be a lot more public education about it. It is also a situation where there is costs involved because it takes time. None of us have a magic nose like Bewitched did to like snap it all into place. And of course, people who end up saying, I'm just going to digitize everything and then throw the originals away. Whoa. And needless to say, if you don't organize the physical stuff, then you're going to have a disorganized physical box of stuff, and you're going to have a disorganized digital box, file of stuff. So the Photo Managers is the first place to go to find a photo manager in your community, wherever you are. We have 2 professional photo organizers here in Albuquerque. One I think is more like doing more author work. She's doing more of that right now, but Terry, and I'm going to mess up her last name. I think it begins with a W. She has a framing shop, and she does organizing and digitizing of your stuff and film. So if you bring in old, audio CDs, you bring in 8mm film, any film, home film, VHS. She doesn't do it herself, but she works closely with someone who will transfer that digitally. But working with somebody who can help you organize it before you digitize is always the best, because how many of you know that there's like how many duplicates and quadruplicates? Remember when you got free photos? Like you could and you were going to give them away to people and they're still in the boxes. Yep. So there's no reason to digitize those, because digitizing does still cost a fair amount. So, but the Photo Managers, they go through a process. So they have a code of ethics. They have a certification process. So everyone on that site are professional photo organizers, and they would be happy to work with you with both your physical and digital backlog and overwhelm. Anything else for anybody? And let's pass these around. Okay. Right. So, needless to say, we are offering this again tomorrow. It is a little bit different in that it's supposed to be bringing an object that is important to you. And then consider the question or consider the request of what do you want to have happen once you're gone with that thing. Okay, so I ask a few questions about the object that you can ask yourself at the top of the page, and then there's the resources afterwards. So are there any questions? If you know anyone in the New York City area, in Brooklyn, I am doing a couple of events there. I'm actually bringing the Newly Dead game to New York City on November 3rd, thanks to my connection with Gail. And I'm also doing a show and tales. It's called What Our Friends Left Behind, for a friend who just ended up launching her book called by the same title. So the challenge that we all had and faced during the pandemic when we lost our friends and we didn't have the ability, we didn't go do the things, like especially in New York City, we didn't go out, we didn't see people in the settings, and then all of a sudden, like months into the pandemic, we found out on social media and all of those kinds of things that they passed away. And I lost over 25 friends during the first 18 months of the pandemic. And my friend Vicky, who's the author, she lost about a dozen during that time. And the problems that we all had, you couldn't go to funerals in person, you couldn't get hugs, you couldn't, I didn't have my friends' families' address, so I could send a condolence, card to, like, it was just a big, so we're inviting people again to bring an object related to their friend who passed away and share the story as a way to, build deeper connections and community and legacy.
And you'll be conducting the Newly Dead game this Friday
Yes,
evening.
along with our
Danielle.
Death Doula Danielle. We're gonna be co-hosting.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
I want to see how you do that.
I don't know.
Well,
We want to see that
I'll
too.
bring the pads of paper and the pens.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
it's like the newlywed game, but the questions are how well you know your partner's last wishes.